Okay, this week we are sitting down with Joshua Bilmes, president of the Jabberwocky Literary Agency. So, what gave you the idea to start Jabberwocky
Um, I thought deep down that, one, it was something I could do if I was ever not at the Scott Meredith Agency. There was like a period of several weeks when we were in exile from the office because it was being renovated and I was working from home. I guess summer of '94, and I got a fax machine to have at home to help keep in touch with the office and my clients and things, and I thought kind of half jokingly that, well, and if ever, I'll have a fax machine. Um, so, um, so when I had the opportunity and I had enough of a client list, it was, am I going to just toss away something that I've now spent 8, 9 years building? Or do I try and stick with what I have? And I looked at the numbers and I was reasonably confident if I started my own agency that I had half of the money I would need to kind of hole up in my apartment and work from home and make a go of it, and that if I did it, the other half would come up from somewhere. I would sell some things, and that's pretty much what ended up happening. The interesting thing, as successful as the business became, is it's not easy starting up a business. My first, second, third, fourth, and fifth years were all about the same amount of commission income that I took in year one on my own. And that I didn't envision. I figure, so you start it, you have a tough first year, and I made what I needed to do the first year, made even a little bit more, but I didn't factor in that I'd be 5 years at the absolute same place, 6 years in before the business actually started to grow. If I had known that, not sure I would have signed up for it. There wasn't a fun 5 years. It wasn't even a really fun 6th or 7th or 8th year. It was close to, 9, 10 years in before I was finally actually comfortable and not worrying a lot.
So in that 6th year, was there a particular book that started moving up anything, or?
No, I mean, it was just steady growth. Tanya Huff, Elizabeth Moon, Simon Green, Shalane Harris, a lot of these authors were all just in the, growth cycle of their careers, not making a lot of money necessarily, but just, steadily making more each year. And then if you're in it long enough, if you can survive in the publishing business long enough, it's hard not to be in a situation where there starts to be some benefit from a backlist, from having royalties come in, where you don't kind of have to work in the present day to make the money, rather than having to only earn money that is directly related to a deal you're doing right then. It just starts to make a bit of a difference.
Okay, that makes sense. Where did the name Jabberwocky come from? I mean, I know it's Lewis Carroll, but why did you decide?
Well, my initials. So I knew the name of the agency long before I had the agency. I knew my initials, literary word, not naming the agency directly after myself, but being literary and having my name kind of in there. So, yeah, that I had thought of well before the fax machine, well before anything else. I kind of said, if I ever have my own agency, what would be a better name for it than Jabberwocky?
I like that. I like that style of decision making. I'm very appreciative of that. So you mentioned that of all the works you've represented, your favorite is The Speed of Dark, which is on that shelf.
What I say actually is that it's the work I'm proudest of, which is a little different from calling it a favorite, because there are a lot of books that I like, but I'm really just very proud of that one, because it really is a special book. It's so personal to the author. It's a moving story. It's different from what she'd been done, what she was known for. It speaks to people who share her experiences. It has something to say to people who don't. The reviews for the book, like the Washington Post, Elizabeth Hand did that review. Some books promise to change the way you see the world. This one actually does. You don't get to associate yourself with a lot of books that are like that in a career. Even a very, very long career, that book is special to me. And it's amazing. One way I know, a lot of people in my family don't read science fiction and fantasy. My parents certainly not. And this was a book that they were able to read and have it speak to them. Having my father at one point talk to one of my nephews about the book, and to know from the conversation that, yes, he'd actually read the book. It might be the only book I represented that both of my parents read, that probably everyone in my family has read and gotten something out of. And that is, as I said, I'm just really, really proud of that book.
I can see why. So this is going a little out of order, but you mentioned that not a lot of people in your fantasy read fantasy sci-fi. So how did you get into it? What was your earliest experience?
Happenstance, like a lot of this is, like a lot of life is. We'd gone to Boston, my parents, my younger brother and I, for a weekend. My parents were doing a bridge weekend or Hearts weekend or something like that, and we were staying at the hotel where Boscone was taking place that same weekend, the long-running Boston area science fiction convention. They let us into the dealer's room, even though we weren't members. It was around 6 months after the first issue of Omni Magazine had gone on sale. They had a table. They were giving away free samples. I took them. Always take things when they're free. And I just started reading that magazine, started reading some of the fiction there, and I was hooked. Orson Scott Card in particular, Unaccompanied Sonata, and a story of his, I can't remember the name of it, but it's very relevant now. Self-driving cars, huge freeways. One of the cars breaks down. There's a traffic jam that they can't clear for several days. So the solution is you just drop buckets of pavement over the stalled cars and boom.
That's disturbing. I love it.
That's disturbing, but it was a hell of a good story, and those two stories by Orson Scott Card really made an impression. Not long after that, you started to see things like Sand Kings and Night Flyers by George R. R. Martin in Omni Magazine. I was just totally hooked, and from that February, it took less than a year for me to just be deeply immersed in reading science fiction and fantasy.
So, um, and you said it was Omni that you picked up?
Omni Magazine, yeah.
Did you write letters to Omni as well, or was it just to Analog?
I might have written one or two, but basically, Analog was, and Stan Schmidt at Analog, that was my pen pal.
Okay.
And just interesting to note, Stan Schmidt was the successor at Analog to Ben Bova, who was lured away from editing Analog to be the fiction editor for Omni Magazine. So one of the reasons reading Analog appealed to me was there was a connection of authors and things where even after Omni had started, you were very likely to see some of the same author names on the cover of an issue of Analog. So that became the logical kind of next place for me to go to see more of what I was liking in the one.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So, tangent finished, back to our previous line of questioning. So, you've probably seen a lot, more sci-fi writing, more fantasy sci-fi writing than most people in the industry have today. So in your opinion, what distinguishes good genre writing from bad and great from good?
It's hard to know what makes something just reasonably good. A starting point to deal with is that well over 80%, even over 90% of what comes across our desks, first as query letters, and then when we request things as actual manuscripts, the bulk of it is just not likely to be very good at all. So there's kind of the good where somebody is just able to write cleanly or something and relay a story with prose that is just completely unobtrusive to the story. It's like tofu. It takes on the taste of whatever story they're using with their workmanlike prose. And then what begins, though, I would say, to set things apart is the ability to have a voice, where your writing isn't just a vehicle to tell the story, but it's a vehicle to tell something about you or the characters, or you're just able to do something that you see something in the words that isn't just a vessel for relaying the events of a story. That, I think, is the first real jump you can make to a higher level of writing. And a voice, of course, can be many different things. Reading a New Yorker story is one kind of voice. Reading Isaac Asimov or N.K. Jemisin are very different kinds of voices, but the ability to do something more. And then great writing, again, some people will be really strong at dialogue. Some are really strong at description. Some just come up with great stories and it isn't about the writing at all. There are a lot of different ways to do something that readers will be especially interested in reading. But just finding a combination where you're doing something that is appreciably better than what most other people are able to do.
And on the flip side of that, what are the mistakes that you see writers make most often?
You know, some people just can't do it. So it's not really that they're making a mistake, it's just that they don't have a gift for it. You know, not everybody can become a great tennis player, a great cellist, or a great politician. Not everybody can become a great writer. It's a very rare group of people that are either have the natural gift or at least enough of one that they can will themselves there through practice and hard work. When it comes to the query letters that cross our desks, there's so much good advice in what you should do that I'm always amazed that the percentage of letters that don't do anything wrong is as small a percentage as it is.
So you've said voice, character, story, all of these things are important qualities. So what advice would you give to either an author or an agent, your choice, who's looking to work with the fantasy, science fiction, thriller kind of genre?
Well, the most important thing, I mean, if you want to be working in the science fiction and fantasy genre, you better be reading a lot, and not just in the genre. It's hard to be a writer if you don't read broadly, if you don't know things, have experiences underlying what you're putting on the page. From a very kind of like, you know, nuts and bolts, now I want to find an agent, now I want to find a publisher. I mean, the acknowledgments of a book is one of the best places to start because it'll thank an editor, thank an agent a lot of times, and if it's a book you like, you know those people work with books you like, and maybe they'll want to work with yours. And just so many different resources online, especially these days, to find your way to people. I don't know if I have advice per se in like how do you become an agent. It seems like there are so many different paths to take to get there, and so many different skill sets. Lots of different people in the world. So there isn't one type of agent that's right for every author, one type of author that's right for every agent. So I'm not even necessarily going to say you have to read to become a literary agent if you're able to actually like just sell amazingly well or have a great rapport or something. I mean, like, yeah, you need to read, but you don't necessarily need to be one of the great editors of the world to be a literary agent. But on the other hand, being one of the great editors of the world can be a valuable tool to a successful career as an agent. It's just, there's not one type of person, there isn't one type of agent, there are hundreds of us out there, thousands of authors for us all to work with.
And what, so what role would you consider yourself to be, to play with your authors? What, you listed a couple of different skill sets that you think an agent might benefit from. Which of those do you think you excel at?
Yeah, well, I'm a really good editor and a really good talent judge. And I can say that unequivocally at this point because of the successes I've had and also the opportunity for things I haven't liked that have sold to compare their book scan numbers with mine. So I kind of know that if something is in my wheelhouse, and I think I know how to make it better, probably want to listen to me. I'm really good at it. And one of the things there is spotting authors well before somebody else might. Like in fantasy, there are a lot of like progenitor people. Everybody read R.A. Salvatore. Now maybe everybody's reading Patrick Rothfuss, and you kind of tend to write what you know. One of the things I've always been good at is looking at somebody and saying, well, this is just yet another R.A. Salvatore kind of fantasy thing, but my gut instinct is telling me if this author learns to have their own voice, their own something, that they're going to be good at it. And knowing that, while somebody else might be actually a better author at that particular point in time, but just not feeling that spark that can be kindled. The one person I can take from here and rise up to there, and somebody else is maybe just going to coast along in the middle someplace. So for me, that's been one of my most valuable skill sets. There are so many different things that I am to different people at different places. Still probably learning and will never be the best of hand holders. Like if you want somebody who's just going to hold your hand, not good at that. I'm not good at like faking it. Some people have that ability to just say, oh my God, this is amazing, and to get people to kind of buy into that, whether it is or not, and I don't have that skill. I have to really like it to be able to pretend like I like it.
That makes sense.
I try and be pretty strategic, and I've been in the business long enough to be able to think a little more like a chess player looking at where you're going a few moves from where you are right now. But it's just as best as I can. Ultimately, my goal is to be there for somebody from before they're ready to be published until the book is all the way through the end of its life cycle, and just trying to be there for people, help them avoid problems, solve them if they come up.
Okay. So thank you so much for joining us. This was a wonderful interview. I'm so glad that you could make time for this.
My pleasure.
The video should be up sometime within the next week, so I will let you know. So in the meantime, thank you everyone for watching the Book Cafe. I will see everyone next week, and read good fantasy.